panel is a close friend of mine, one of the best podcasters I've ever met, Max TIMM of the International Screenwriters Association.
How are we doing on mics here? Everybody hears? These are a little hot, as I'm sure some of you have already noticed, but thank you everybody for coming here. I'm with the International Screenwriters Association. I'll get to that in a second, but this is a producers panel, and I think we all need to say a big thank you to ERMAN for putting this panel on. He's been a little overwhelmed today.
You're welcome.
He's been working hard, and he's a producer just like everybody else here. So thank you everybody for being here. We have some amazing guests today. When I found out who was going to be on the panel, my eyes popped, and I thought, wow, these people are for real. So we have a short amount of time, so I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to read their bios, but I want everybody in the audience to understand that this is the producers panel, but we're all creating content in some way, otherwise we probably wouldn't be here watching this event. So you guys are also producers in some way, and we're going to get into just the differences, the relativity of it all, and then really kind of what hits the success mark for everything. But all right, so I'm going to go through these bios quick because I've noticed successful people don't like to gloat, so I'm going to gloat for them. Tommy Harper in the middle. He's an executive producer and 20-year veteran of the motion picture business, having worked on such blockbuster films such as Mission Impossible 3, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Star Trek, and Star Trek Into Darkness. Other credits include Alice in Wonderland, Battle Los Angeles, Jack Ryan, and Big Eyes, just to name a few. After finishing principal photography as the executive producer on Star Wars The Force Awakens, for Walt Disney, Lucasfilm, and Bad Robot, Harper decided to continue his long-standing relationship with J.J. Abrams by joining his team this past year as the Chief Operating Officer for Bad Robot. Alex Ott is right next to him. Alex is one of Hollywood's most respected young producers, having worked on such films as End of Watch, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Pena, Sabotage, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Sony Pictures released Fury, starring Brad Pitt and Shia LaBeouf, and the upcoming Suicide Squad, starring Will Smith and Jared Leto, which is releasing by Warner Brothers in August of 2016. So thanks for being here, Alex. Shankar on the end. He's a producer who's carved out a niche for himself within the R-rated violent action and crime genres. His producing credits include The Grey, Lone Survivor, A Walk Among the Tombstones, and Killing Them Softly. In recent years, he's focused on the online space of video producing and continues to focus his efforts on the YouTube world ever since his bootleg video version of Marvel's The Punisher, starring his friend and the Punisher himself, Thomas Jane, became a cult hit. That video has since tallied nearly 8 million views on YouTube. Go ahead, Andy. You want to say something? What? Did you want to add something?
No. Well, I mean, the Power Rangers thing. It's interesting. It's interesting that you said Punisher over Power Rangers.
I didn't say that again.
The acoustics here. But we got like really sick water bottles. They're like gold.
Oh. Well, Addy, it's the bootleg version of The Punisher, right? Is that what I'm referencing? Am I referencing that correctly anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I watched it. It was really cool.
Really?
Yeah, I loved it.
Doing a sequel.
Sequel. All right, Kevin Clark. Kevin Clark began his tenure with the AFCI, the Association of Film Commissioners International, in 2005 as the communication manager. He successfully rebranded the organization before becoming the director of operations in 2009. In 2013, after 8 years with the association, he assumed the position as executive director. Since becoming executive director, his top priority has been to revitalize AFCI University, which I want to hear a little bit more about. With more than 300 members in 45 countries on 6 continents, AFCI is the #1 resource for location shooting and promotes economic development through commercial film and television production. So thank you for being here, Kevin. And last but not least, our lone female guest tonight, Patrice Avery is a producer and the head of studio at Halon Entertainment. Halon is, among many other things, and of which I'm sure Patrice can give more info, is a previs company. Just as a background, I had to look this up, I'll admit. I didn't know what previs was, but it's a collaborative process that generates preliminary versions of shots or sequences, predominantly using 3D animation tools in a virtual environment. It enables filmmakers to visually explore creative ideas, plan technical solutions, and communicate a shared vision for efficient production. And she's clapping for me, but I just stole that right from their website. So I'm not ashamed to admit that. But Patrice joined Halon in 2008 with over 20 years of feature and television animation, visual effects, and video game production experience. Previously with DreamWorks Animation, Patrice has recently worked on projects such as Jurassic World, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and the upcoming Ghostbusters. So as you can tell, we have some amazing guests. We have limited time, so I'm going to jump right in. So Tommy and Alex, you guys can take a crack at this question, but there are so many reasons why a project in general, whether it's TV or film or anything else, finds success. And success is so relative. There's so many different ways a project can be deemed successful, but we'll take out A-list star attachments and budgets and the business side of things. What do you guys think makes for a successful project? Or in other words, what makes for a great story? Because really that's kind of where it starts.
You're taking out the A-list star, huh?
It's cheating.
That's cheating.
Yeah. I mean, you've worked with plenty.
Sometimes those movies, that's what gets the movie made. It doesn't matter how good the script is, doesn't matter what director you have.
Okay, then how about this? So how about, with all the A-list star attachments you've had, what have you noticed as kind of like a common denominator of the types of material that they're looking for?
It's a perfect storm sometimes, but you know, sometimes it's just you know, great character, great dialogue. It's all the things you just kind of make a checklist.
I think it starts with the story, and you have to have a great story to engage the audience and get the audience into the theater and to get people emotionally tied to the story. And people want to escape for 2 hours and go to the movie theater and kind of forget what's going on in their normal everyday life. So it starts, one, with story, character, emotion. You have to bring a lot of creative people together to voice their vision to the story. And I think it also, even if you don't have an A-list actor, you have to have a great talent to, you know, to tell your story and to get everybody engaged.
Yeah, because I mean, with Star Wars, there's such a huge universe with Star Wars. There are so many different ways that story could have gone. Was there something specific that you guys were hoping to hit with the story itself so that the audience, which is expecting amazing, like there was no room for anything less? Was there a formula? Was there something you got that JJ knew he needed to get? Or, you know, because you're going to sell tickets to the next Star Wars, but you got to get people coming back.
Yeah, we hope. You know, really it was, I mean, not speaking for him, he wanted to feel like a kid again. And when he sat in the theater, or, you know, when he was 10 years old and he first saw the movie, he wanted to feel that feeling again and not rely on, you know, yes, we had CG and we had all the effects of today's world, but we didn't want to rely on everything. So we, you know, we built a massive amount of sets. We had massive amount of, you know, people working on the film, and I think what we wanted to do was capture a story and tell a story that engaged the audience and to make you feel like a kid again, and introduce brand new characters along with characters that some of the kids don't even know. But the audience range are literally 2-year-olds to, you know, 100-year-olds. So you have that range of people to engage.
Yeah, and when you're making adults feel like kids again, then you know the kids are going to feel like kids, I would assume. You know? So Alex, back to you then.
I just wanted to add to that. There's kind of this struggle I felt in the industry right now between pre-existing IP, intellectual property like Star Wars, like Mission Impossible, and then there's you know, what's not based on IP.
Was Fury based on IP?
No.
No. Okay.
It's just everything that happened in that film came from history. But it was all just kind of patched together from the writer and director. But yeah, there's just this struggle right now with you know, being beholden to, you know, I'd imagine you guys were struggling a lot with what do we want to include, what do the fans want to see. So that's where you kind of get creative about you know, what characters to include, what set pieces to kind of create. it's a really interesting time right now.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move to Patrice for a second because I read on yours. I did a lot of reading of your website, evidently. And by the way, I want to say Tommy actually painted that Kylo Ren painting. He didn't even know it was being auctioned off. It's kind of wild. But no, so there's a quote and testimonial from Jon Favreau on your site, which I thought was great, and we're kind of still sticking to somewhat of the story aspect here. But he said, Halon is a company that utilizes state-of-the-art technology while never losing sight of the fact that the real job is to tell a story. So I'm fascinated by the previs process, and I just want to know what comes to you. Do you ask the filmmakers questions in order to visualize their own story and voice? I mean, how much back and forth is there? Is there like a questionnaire?
I think with anything creative, everyone approaches it a little differently. So with each production, we have to go with what they want to do. So different directors will have different levels of involvement. But you might start with a director that maybe has a beat sheet of things he wants to hit, and so we have to dive in and help explore that story with him. Or you might have somebody who wants to board everything and feels more comfortable starting there, and then we'll go to us to really get into the three-dimensional space and really figure out their lenses and how they want to really shoot it. And so when they get on the set, they have that blueprint, and that gives them more freedom to really step outside of that and find those happy accidents and really push it with the actors because they know they're getting all their shots in a cheaper form, like doing it with us with like 5 guys in a room instead of on the set with tons of people there.
There's a process of writing there, though, right? I mean, you have to break down how this story. I mean, how long is this previs?
Other folks, if we get in really early on Battleship, we got in really early, and Pete Berg just wanted to just explore what the movie was. He wasn't sure yet. He was still writing.
Interesting. So he didn't even know. So he used the previous process as part of the writing process.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tom.
To jump in real quick, I mean, previs, if it's done, used right and correctly, and you have enough time, what Patrice was saying, you can schedule and budget. It can help you schedule and budget the film. So you can basically take your previs, cut it up, put it up on a sticky board, plan your days, day 1 through whatever the sequence is, and make sure it actually fits so you have no surprises on the set. And you can also, from a budgetary standpoint, make sure it all fits in with the box that you're trying to do. And if it's not, you then start editing it, taking out pieces to make sure things fit. And the other thing that it can do is, if you're early on in the process, you can use it as a tool to get your movie greenlit. So you can almost do it, bring on your editor, cut the sequence so it is more like your film, and put some sound design behind it and get people really excited.
So is this kind of a result of the technology forcing this better way of storyboarding? Because it sounds like just a more interactive way to storyboard.
Yeah, I think because you're getting into the three-dimensional space and you're making kind of an animated version, you're seeing it how you really shoot it with the lenses and everything. So storyboards can do a lot of emoting, like coming from an animation background, that's where you do a lot of the acting. But in terms of the layout and the cameras, you're not really getting to sort that out. And with stuff like the space fights in Star Wars, you have to plan all that out, and they're not real objects. Right. So you need to kind of see that, and that might be an exploration where you're just, let's do some cool flying movements and see what looks great, and let's plan out the fight that way.
It also allows what we used it for on Suicide Squad, and I don't know if this is so not my world. I don't know if it's new technology, but it helped the director. The previs folk built the set in 3D, and it allowed the director to take a virtual camera and walk around the set with the DP, with the photographer, and say, okay, this looks good, I like this angle, I like this angle, maybe we can do our stunt over here, and allowed him to basically do a trial pre-directing the movie. Yeah. Saves time on set.
I didn't even know this existed, so I'm already learning, and hopefully right along with it. And I would love to. But I think this could work well for an independent director or producer as well. I mean, obviously they can't spend the money on the true previs process that you have, but there's just that natural planning process that I think every content creator needs to have in some way. Otherwise, you're just making stuff up as you go, and most of the time they are anyway, but at least there's this practice process. We could keep going with that, but I want to get everybody involved here. So let's switch quick to Kevin. We have a lot of filmmakers in the audience. And I'm assuming, right? Who are filmmakers? And even though for some of you who didn't raise your hand and you're like, well, I'm a writer, I want you to still consider yourself as a filmmaker because you're like a job creator, basically. You're giving someone, a director, a job to. Anyway, I can keep going. So Kevin, what are some common misconceptions that directors and filmmakers might have that they should know? And then, well, is there something that you wish all filmmakers knew that you didn't have to continually repeat?
Well, I think there's a running joke, you know, anytime anyone says, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, you know, I think everyone kind of pauses a little bit. But I'd like to say in our case with the film commissions, it actually is true. If you work with the film commission ahead of time, you can avoid a lot of other problems, running into permissions or access or a lot of other issues later on. So don't wait to call the film commission until something has gone wrong, or you've had a permit yanked, or you've been shut down for something. And we do see that with a lot of first-time producers, directors, is that they're afraid to ask permission, and they think, oh, we'll shoot first and ask for permission later, and that can go terribly, terribly wrong. Not just, I mean, it can be things like safety, but bad press, and perhaps worst of all is you will burn the location for whoever may come behind you.
Okay, wow. Let's talk a little bit about the university that you're working with. So it's this online education program for film commission professionals. Just tell us, what is that?
So we have, you can't go to school, like USC does not have a college of film commissioning. So we provide education for all the film commissions in the world because things change a lot, particularly like in the last 10 years when it's come to legislation or economic impact, proving that these are real jobs. So we help film commissions learn how to do that part. So our promise that we make to the industry is that when you work with a film commission, that they are actually trained and qualified and know what they're doing, rather than someone that may be well-intentioned in the community but doesn't fully understand the ins and outs of on-location production. So that's the promise that we make back to the industry through our university program.
And this kind of just goes along the line of the theme of planning and just being prepared, and the film commissions in every state can help you do that. I mean, it's necessary if you plan on shooting something. But let's go down to Addy. Let's get him away from his cell phone. I know he has other things happening, but
I'm actually interacting with the audience, so I'm
perfect. No, I want to move a little bit to voice, because I love that your bio said that you carved out a little bit of a niche for yourself in terms of the violent R-rated crime action movies, which is pretty specific, but it follows, which I love, but it's also a testament to Addy knowing himself, knowing the types of material that he likes, and sticking to that, because it's not just a strength, it's a part of who you are. That's just in here. And so let's talk about voice a little bit, and how long, have you always loved that kind of just violent action film, or did this evolve?
You know, it's really weird, because I feel like on some level I'm playing a character. You know,
because I've seen your dog, and it's really cute.
Right. Wow, that just threw me off. Now I'm thinking about my dog. I completely lost my train of thought.
You feel like you're playing a character?
Yeah. So yes, I feel on some level like I'm playing a character, and that's not necessarily my favorite genre of film, right? I'm really into comic books. Like, I'm a massive comic book nerd.
Which are pretty violent, I mean, in and of themselves.
Oh, so, I mean, some of them are, and I think like after the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns, yeah, they got a little more violent, and that became, you know, Watchmen and stuff. But yeah, no, I really like comic books, and I really like professional wrestling. Like, those are.
Okay. That makes sense.
Pardon?
That makes sense.
Right, and that kind of explains the face paint if anyone's seen my YouTube channel.
But in terms of discovering the type, like, because voice.
I love comedies.
You what?
I love comedies. I love like Will Ferrell's like probably my favorite actor.
Okay. All right.
But if you imagine Will Ferrell in any movie that I've done, it just becomes like instantly a comedy. You know?
Right. And
Will
probably
Ferrell with a shotgun.
Yeah.
Will Ferrell's now Judge Dredd.
So did you because voice can mean so many things, and we'll talk about voice a little bit more.
Right.
Because it's different for everybody, and really it's so hard to define that. But there's also a level of tone. So did you have a conscious decision of, this is the tone that I want in these projects? I want them to be relatively comical, but with, you know, heavy violence, R-rated, et cetera, et cetera. Or did it just come out?
I mean, it was a sign of the times, right? I mean, part of it too is I got my start in this business in a very specific sector of the business at a very specific time, right? The recession had happened. Like, movies weren't really getting theatrical releases. The international marketplace kind of was imploding. you know, like a lot of countries just simply weren't buying American movies, and you know, right before I broke in, so to speak, to the business, Mandate was making movies like Juno and stuff. That just stopped. That just completely stopped. And now, if you wanted to get a movie sold in that marketplace, like, you needed something that could travel. So comedies immediately got eliminated, right? And really, it was movie star driven movies where there was a dude on the poster with a gun,
Right.
which tend to be action movies.
Yeah,
Usually, unless they're like just they're like false advertising, you know,
Right.
which happens a lot in films.
But you were using what the industry was giving you, and then allowing yourself to then fit within what the industry wanted and needed. So it wasn't just industry needs this, I'm going to give them this. It's more, I'm going to give them myself.
Right, but you know, part of it too was I was like so young at the time. To tell you the truth, like
There's a naivete there.
Absolutely, and you know, I was like 22 when I started. Well, I think like my first movie happened when I was 22. So like at the time I felt really old, but that was such a small. You know, I'd existed on this planet for such little time that Hollywood was actively conditioning me.
Right.
Which is, I guess, why child stars go insane.
So there's a sense of self-discovery where you are in the world and industry that you're in. And then I think that's the best way you can define voice. Tommy and Alex, what would you guys say? Like, when you're looking at a project, you're reading a script for the first time, do you notice voice, or are you looking and thinking more along the lines of a business proposal? And I mean that sincerely.
I don't know. I don't want to just be one voice all the time. And there are different types of movies. There's you know, the buddy comedy. There's just different types. But I do want that strong voice. I do want somebody that knows the story that they're telling and aware of it. Not self-aware, so it's, you know, kind of tongue-in-cheek. But I've been fortunate enough to work with filmmakers that have that very direct, clean, concise way of storytelling, and it's I don't know, kind of got spoiled.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tim.
I mean, same way. I mean, I've been very fortunate to work with the people I've worked with, and the voice usually comes out, obviously in the writing, and then kind of the voice to the vision of the film. And you know, sometimes, you know, as you're developing the project, a lot of times you're prepping the movie because you have a release date, and you're doing all this stuff as you're at the same time writing the script. So it's always good to have your person leading the charge have the voice that everybody wants to listen to and to understand and know their vision, because it just helps the process immensely. So yeah, it's extremely important. I mean, even you never have enough money, no matter what the budget of the film is. Right? You know, and I've done movies that are very expensive, and I've done movies that are cheap, and you never have enough money, and the problems still exist. And I think that you have to restrict yourself and put your producing partners and your director in a box, else, and they want that. Most people want that, and they want to have confinement, and because it makes the process better, and it makes the movie better. And if you just have open rate, you know, just do whatever you want to do. It won't you know, work for anybody. You'll have, you know, a disaster in your hands, and creatively the movie will suffer.
Right. Do you want to add to that?
I was told one time that you write a film 3 times. You write it when you write it, you write it when you direct it, and you write it in editing.
Right.
And so you do have to have, that's part of what producers do, is to help keep creative on that line of don't get lost in the trees, just keep, you know, see the long road.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Group question, but we're going to start with Kevin and Patrice here, and then go to Addie, and then Tommy and Alex. But general question, but in what direction do you see the industry moving, either technologically speaking or in terms of content, how the content is received? Are you seeing shifts?
You know, for the creative side, you have a lot more like action films and, you know, the superhero films and stuff. We do a lot of the action because that's what we're trying to help them sort out. So, Personally, like I watch a lot of independent films, and so it's fun for me to see the new developments, and like with Tangerine being shot on iPhone, and all these different ways people are finding to get their story out there and to the people without it having to be the big blockbusters. So I think with Netflix, with Amazon, Hulu, all the different ways of reaching people now, I think we're really seeing some great stories come out of all that.
Yeah, there's freedom there.
Yeah.
So I come at the industry in a slightly different approach. We're out to, mainly I look at film as an economic development tool, and I know that might horrify some people. But basically we want to prove that these are real jobs, right? How many of you were told, like, okay, you go do your filmmaking thing and then you have to get a real job, right? We are out to prove these are real jobs. So when I see where the where the industry is headed, when I see more content being created, I think that's fantastic, because then I see that's more people that get to, for a living, do what they love. And I think a great avenue for that has been all the new avenues, that content can be distributed, etc. I mean, like everyone is saying now, Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, all those guys. My concern over the next 10 years or so is that these new avenues, I really hope that these new distribution channels don't become as locked down as the other ones were previously. They honor that, don't do evil, kind of creed.
Yeah, so Addie, is there a worry of saturation as far as not only like the small screen? It's really hard to be a YouTube star now because so many people are doing it. The TV marketplace, every network has a show. So how do you see this industry evolving?
What you just said was like was super profound. It was like awesome, man. No, because I literally think about that a lot, about how the movies I grew up watching were somehow weirdly kind of developed in a corrupt system that chose almost a homogenous structure versus almost like a free thinking one. And
I'm done.
He's right though. He's right. Because there is profundity there, because we are all content creators because of the amount of areas that we have to bring our content. Then it's only
right. And then once those distribution channels, once those platforms become more closed off, they become more elitist. Right. They become more about the bottom line, so to speak, than just than giving anyone on the planet a voice.
Yeah. Right.
That's the fear.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
To add, I don't think that's necessarily, my concern is not just to say, like the Netflixes or Hulus or those guys, that they lock down their distribution, but even the content, the pipeline that you use to access that, whether that be Google Fiber or Comcast or Time Warner or whoever, and how they throttle that traffic. And even if throttling is illegal, then instead they just do it a different way, and now there's it becomes like T-Mobile is doing, and now Netflix doesn't count against your data cap, for example. Well, all that is, that's a totally it's the same thing. It's the same thing for package.
It's like the equivalent of the backroom handshake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Between the exhibitor and some other guy who basically wouldn't allow.
The same thing's happening basically.
But different package.
Different package. Right. Technological. So Tommy, now is the movie industry going to move away from the tentpole thing, or is that going to stick around? Or because it's funny because we have huge successes. Star Wars was giant. Superman versus Batman was nice solid weekend, and then it dropped off. But then we keep having another success, so we're thinking, tentpoles are the way to go. How's this going to?
Over the past couple years, there has been a mad land grab for these mid-level budget, kind of adult-driven, story-driven films. The Cross Creeks, the Broad Greens, these are independent financiers that will eventually need, an outlet to distribute. But as far as getting the movie made, they have the capital to get it going based on the script that they determine. So studios, very much in my experience, are going. They're in the tentpole business, but over the past couple years, and especially with Netflix and Amazon, there is a mad land grab for those types of films.
That's good to hear, because it seemed like for a few years there, it was either a movie that you make for $1 million or $200 million. So it's good to hear that it's almost like the middle class of the movie world starting to slowly build back up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we had a movie just come out a couple weeks ago that cost, it was cheap, under 15, and it's made close to 70, 80, and so we're doing movies in all price range from 10 up to, $200 million, but, and it's all about story. It's like, we just want to make great stories, so whatever that, we do have on our, we have the missions and the trucks and the this and that on our, in Star Wars with our Under Bad Robot, but we also are trying to do, smaller films, and I think our TV side of the business is also trying to break, new ground. We've had a network show, but we're also getting, we have cable shows coming out this year with HBO, Showtime, and we just had one on Hulu, so there's a lot of stuff happening. I think that, it's a very interesting time because people can make a film on their iPhone and they can cut it on their iPhone and they can do anything, and we're always looking for new storytellers, and you can find them, you just have to dig and find them, but YouTube, anywhere you can start to look for people. So I think yes, studios want the tentpoles, they want to try to check the box and have success and feel comfortable, but that comes with a huge risk, but I do hope that movies come back that don't cost a massive amount of money and have a lot of risk, and more movies get made.
Right, because really the core of that tentpole movie is because there is a built-in audience already, and the studios can know that they're going to get a certain amount of people come to the theater, they can kind of justify spending that money.
Yeah, but like when we made Star Wars, Bob Iger would always say this, is like it was a $4 billion movie. I mean, he paid $4 billion for the franchise, and if we screwed it up, it would have been bad. So the risk is huge, but I think that when you go make a movie like we did for 10 Cloverfield Lane, which was $11, $12 million, it's
what was the movie? I'm sorry.
10 Cloverfield Lane, and it's a risky movie for many different reasons, but financially the studio was excited because it didn't kill him.
But it seems like it's an example, 10 Cloverfield Lane, of technology catching up with our imaginations for one, and the cost of that technology kind of coming down a little bit. So even at the higher levels, I mean, obviously the technology now with the iPhones, and anybody can go out and have some form of a small camcorder or whatever and make a movie. So that technology's there, but it seems, maybe I'm wrong, but is the price of this technology coming down at that high level, even for animators and visual effects? Maybe?
I don't know. It's still expensive to make movies, but I'm also looking forward to in the future to see where VR, AR, where that goes and how you incorporate it into films. And not to say that I want to go sit in a movie theater in an AR or VR environment, but what's the new 3D? Not every movie will be like that, but I'm excited to see where does that arena go.
Right. How much time do we have? I'm just curious. ERMAN, 2 minutes? 2 minutes. All right, so last question. I asked this of, I host a podcast called Curious About Screenwriting. It's free. You guys can find it on iTunes or at networkisa.org. That's the International Screenwriters Association website. A lot of great guests. But I asked this as one of the last questions of all of them. So everybody can start. We'll start with Patrice, actually. This will be interesting. What is the worst advice you've ever received?
I could think a lot on the personal side, but work-wise, I don't really suffer fools lightly, so if I have bad advice, I usually don't take it. I really don't hold on to it. I don't really have.
So then maybe what could be the worst advice that you could give a creative person who still hasn't quite hit that level?
I think for me it's just believing in your idea. If you have that passion and you believe what your story is that you're telling, I think that will sell more in a room than anything. If you're not sure, if you're not quite there, you have to have that passion and that kind of fever behind it, I think.
Yeah, because if you don't believe in it, then they're not.
Because that's what gets me excited is when I'm working with a director or a creative person that is just so behind this and they're selling this vision and you get caught up in it, and it's just an energy that's just electric. So
yeah, it's like when somebody's telling you a story. It's like, I feel like I'm there. Addie, what about you? Worst advice you've ever received?
Well, I don't know if this is the worst advice I've ever received or the best advice I've ever received. I don't know. I should tell this story. Okay, when I first moved when my first movie was happening, I decided I wanted to change my name and go by Shankar, spell it in all caps. I don't know where this idea came from. Actually, I know exactly where this idea came from. And I was serious about it, and I literally had people for like a month, just people would email me that way and spell it in caps. And then the publicist from the movie was like, "You can't do this." And I was like, "Why not?" And she was like, "You can't do this. This is completely insane," which it is. And yeah, so now I have a problem.
So did you stop doing it because of that advice, or?
Oh yeah, no, she literally would not. And this was, and the publicist on this movie was actually this lady, Ronnie Chasen, who is like a legendary publicist in the business. So she was kind of telling me, and it was kind of like, almost like grandmotherly advice. Like, I'm not letting you do this. Like, I'm literally taking it, deleting it, and writing your name properly, and then sending it out. So.
Okay, well, but there's a little gem in there, though. It's that you had an idea, and then you listened to someone give you advice on that idea, and you were open enough to go, maybe you're right, as opposed to stubborn, you know. But, all right, Kevin, what about you?
I don't know about the worst advice, but I'd say the worst example I ever had set for me was that you have to be unkind to make it in this business. Okay. And I think that's the worst example that people can set.
Because obviously all those people are total assholes. Tommy, go ahead.
It's a tough one, but I think somebody once told me, you know, when I was first starting out, like, you have to do things in steps. And you have to do this job, and you have to do this job, and you have to work your way up. And I don't believe that. I think that you should just work hard and do your job and do your best and get noticed. And if you have it, then you should get moved up. And I think that a lot of times people won't give people an opportunity because they haven't gone, you know, a certain route or whatever, and I think that's, I don't believe in that. So, you know, I came up through different areas, and I, you know, jumped around a bit, and I got given a shot, and I took advantage of it. So I'm a firm believer in if people have it, then give them the opportunity.
Off of, you know, learning by example or leading by example, the worst example set for me was, well, it happens consistently over as I'm making films, but just the mass panic that people have when something doesn't go right, or, you know, whatever it is, the director doesn't get what he wants, or the producer, you know, is fighting with money with the director, and it's like everybody just needs to take a breath. That's the advice that I got.
I suppose that is something you can kind of only learn through experience. I mean, it's just, you can maybe think you're planning for a disaster, but when it actually happens, oh my God, that's why they call it a disaster.
Yeah,
so it's just,
you're making a movie.
Right, right. Well, I want everybody to know that everyone on all of the panels tonight were amazing. They all achieved and are continuing to achieve a lot of success, but I want them to be examples as opposed to people that you only look up to. I want everyone up here to be considered a peer to everyone out here, because you guys can achieve the same success they all have. So thank you, everybody, for